All right, baby. Today is Thursday. It's July 11th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. I'm here with Chief. We got a very interesting one for you today, Chief. We're talking about John DeLorean.
Amazing guy. I really think that this should be an HBO miniseries. Like, you could make a Succession type of story out of the John DeLorean background.
So obviously everyone knows the DeLorean from Back to the Future, but...
And what other major movie? If you don't get this, I will be disgusted with you.
Hold on.
One of your absolute favorites.
One of my favorites.
One of your absolute favorite movies. You talk about this movie all the time.
A DeLorean?
Yeah.
It's not the Goonies, is it?
Nope.
No. Wedding Singer?
Yeah.
Glenn had one.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
He's drunk after the club and they're getting in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't puke in the DeLorean, okay?
The DeLorean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a crazy story. So I'm excited to get into it. Before we do, though, I want to talk about Game Time. I'm on the app right now, and as far as I can see, they have tickets to Windy City Smokeout this weekend. Carrie Underwood on Sunday for $88.
That's a crazy good price.
It is.
Yeah.
You get the barbecue. You can see Carrie Underwood. You see a bunch of other people, too.
It is one of the best events of the entire summer.
Yep. I think our guy Cooper Allen's playing there. There's a lot of people.
You can go see Cody Bellinger's last days as a Cub coming up here before the deadline.
Could do that. I saw Def Leppard's at Wrigley on Monday. Tickets were like in the 70s. So a lot of good stuff there on Game Time. The official ticketing partner of Barstool Sports. They got the flash deals for sudden discounts, the zone deals when you're feeling flexible and you want to just hop into a game or an event right away. And their lowest price guarantee means that you can find the same seats for less anywhere else. In Game Time will credit you 107% the difference. So it's the best spot for last-minute tickets to see up to 60% off for your favorite events. So what are you waiting for? I'm going to get these smokeout tickets now. So
I might get Nora Jones next weekend, too.
I like
this
that.
coming weekend, I should say.
I like that.
Ravinia, great venue.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yep.
So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code DOGWALK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, John DeLorean.
What a story.
Yeah.
It might be, all things considered, the most American story of all time. Where you have, he's a son of a poor immigrant from Romania. So his father comes over, post-war. He's looking for work. He's in Montana doing work. He finally settles in Michigan. He has no education and becomes a auto industry factory worker like so many immigrants did. Like, what's that movie with Clint Eastwood where he's, what I'm talking about? Gran Torino. Mm-hmm. Where it kind of, it's like what Detroit was and then what it became. But it was like this immigrant hotbed where everybody was making monies in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s because the American auto industry was booming, and his father worked and, didn't make a ton of money, but worked as a carpenter in his spare time. And then John DeLorean, son of an immigrant, was able to get an education. He was he went to a school that was like a auto industry school to become an engineer, and then he got an MBA at Michigan, but then got into the auto industry himself and became a wildly successful executive for the classic car industry. So he started out with Picard, and then he moves over to GM, and he's the guy who came up with the Pontiac GTO. Did you know that?
No.
I did not know that. So Pontiac was like a division of GM that was always struggling. It was like kind of a mom kind of brand. And then he gets in there. He's like, no, we're going to do the American muscle car. And he designed it after this Ferrari, which was also called it was like a GTO 250. So we're going to have an American Ferrari muscle car, and did the GTO and was like hyper successful, fast riser. He became the youngest division head in GM history at 40 years old. Started making a ton of money. Like his salary and bonuses in today's money would have been like $7-8 million a year. So he was like a very successful guy. And because the auto industry, GM at that time, was the biggest company in the world. So it was bigger than like Exxon, bigger than, we think of like tech now as like the big industry. Back then it was the American auto industry. So being he was a very charismatic guy who would dye his hair black. He had like the big sideburns. Like he was the first kind of eccentric high level executive, because back then it was, and we're wearing a shirt and tie, you all kind of dressed like Don Draper, clean cut haircut, buttoned up, and he was just not that. He had the hair, the facial hair. He would never wear a tie, unbutton his shirt. So he was like a cultural icon as an auto industry executive. This guy, he was married 4 times. Part of the reason he was married and divorced so many times, he was running around banging models. So he was banging James Bond girls. He eventually married one of these supermodels in I think it was like the late 70s. So he was just like a man about town. Very good friends with Johnny Carson, Sammy Davis Jr. He was actually he owned, he was a partner in 2 sports teams. So he bought one of the original stakes of the San Diego Chargers. He was also he was one of 15 investors in Steinbrenner's group that bought the Yankees in 1973. So he had connections coast to coast, and he's just like a car guy, which name an auto industry executive now. Like you can't, other than Elon Musk. He's kind of has some parallels to Elon Musk. So he's going through his career. He keeps rising up while doing all these other things. And he gets to a point with GM, and now because of his personality and his look and probably some of his fame, he was always clashing with the leadership, the other leaders of GM. And he gave a quote, and I'll read the quote, of where he kind of like, it was in some magazine, and he kind of just like ripped into his own company. So he was on like this path to potentially be the president, because he was a vice president when he gave this quote in the early 70s, of being the head of the biggest company in the world. And he basically just threw it away because he was tired of like the corporate, not the corporate grind, but like the politics of it. And he was always kind of an outsider, even within his own company, but his numbers and like vision was so undeniable that they couldn't force him out. So he said, in a quote, he said, "There's no forward response at GM to what the public wants today. A car should make people's eyes light up when they step into the showroom." So that was like a quote he gave. It's like, we're just not doing anything. And he said in a different article or a different interview that when he decided, it was like, I got to be done with this and do my own thing. He was given a speech to all these dealership heads from around the country. And he was like, this line of cars is innovative. It's, the best. Like, we're doing all sorts of different things. And he left that speech being like, that was a lie. He's like, these cars are the same old cars we've been rolling out for years. And there's nothing different. It's like, we shaped the fenders a little bit differently. We have a little bit different design, but it's the same fucking car. And he was kind of disgusted with himself. So he's like, I'm going to do my own thing. So that was 1973. He leaves GM to start DeLorean. It was like sent shockwaves across. Like if they had CNBC back then, it would be the lead stories on like Squawk Box. Like, oh, John DeLorean leaves GM. He's starting his own car company. Like, what a crazy person. Okay. There had not been a new like startup auto industry company since Chrysler in like the 20s. Okay, so it just was not done because it costs so much money, because you got to do all the tooling and the dies and all these parts, and you got to build a plant, and you got to create a market, and you got to do something. And it's like you have these giants that do the price wars. It's just insane.
The thought of like me and you just sitting here today be like, let's make a car company.
Impossible.
Insane.
Impossible. That's why, like, I feel like since Elon bought Twitter, it's become fashionable to like hate on Elon and like, oh, he's this, he's that. He is in the same. He actually did what John DeLorean did, but was successful.
Yeah,
he built he started a car company out of nowhere, made it electric, which no one had been able to do profitably before him. Then he put it on his rocket ship and sent it into outer space. Like, it's like Elon is a force, and people always try to discredit, oh, it wasn't his technology. Well, whatever. But like the fact that he did Tesla in this day and age and got it done, is building these plants and has changed the auto industry like forever.
Oh yeah,
everyone's going EV, and it started with Elon and John DeLorean. That was one of his things. He wanted to make a cool looking car that, like the quote says, made people's eyes pop when they see it in the showroom. He also wanted it to be more environmentally friendly. So he got to work in the 70s, like starting to raise money and do designs. And he hired all these like Italian designers to kind of like, let's make the coolest looking car ever. But he raised $500,000 from Sammy Davis Jr., a friend, $500,000 from Johnny Carson. And then he was going, among others, but nowhere near as much, nowhere near what he needed to start a car company from scratch. So he's going all over the place, knocking on doors, kind of like panhandling around Wall Street and these different friends and family and industry power players that he knows. And he just can't do it. He can't get the funding to do this deal. So he has this, he goes to Belfast and he goes to London, and he gets the British government to bankroll the rest of it. He got $140 million from the British government on condition that he would put it in Belfast. Belfast. Have you ever seen the movie In the Name of the Father?
No.
Or The Boxer? Okay, those are two awesome movies. Daniel Day-Lewis stars in both of them. It's all about like the IRA and what was going on in Northern Ireland in the 70s and 80s, and really all the way up until like 1998 is when they finally had like their permanent ceasefire. And those movies show Belfast, and it's like it is eerily looks like scenes from Gaza, where they have like these neighborhoods that are completely walled off, barbed wire across, chain link fence. Like you're going home, but like in order to get to your home from wherever you were, you're passing through this prison looking complex to go and live in like this apartment that resembles a jail cell. Like that's what Belfast was in the 80s, because it was effectively a civil war, because you would have the IRA doing these like terrorist bombings and all this. It was awful, fighting with the British military. They would arrest people, beat people, kill people. It's like a chapter in British history that we don't really talk about in America. So the idea of putting a major manufacturing plant in at that time, one of the worst places in the world was like, what are you doing? But he did it, and did it for $140 million, and it was working. So he hired people, kind of from both sides of that argument. They all kind of worked together, and they had some like normal production issues, but they started rolling out these cars, and it's the car that it's still, I feel like everybody knows what the DeLorean looks like, even though they only ever made, I think the total number of cars they ever made was like 8,000. Okay.
That's it?
That's it. Okay. That's all they were ever able to make was 8,000. So Back to the Future is, put a nuclear reactor in it, flux capacitor. That was what kind of immortalized it. But it is this thing that just resonates, because it's this like car until like that Tesla Cybertruck. That is probably the closest looking thing to what the DeLorean was. They had like the gull wing doors, yep, and that opened up. Imagine trying to like park and like, how do you get out of your car with those doors? Yeah.
Yeah. That was always like the impractical part of it, right? Well, as you see it, it's like, oh, that's sweet. That looks really cool. Yeah. But then it's like, yeah, until
how do you get out?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are many impractical parts of it, actually.
Yeah.
So the other problem they had was they had this big, heavy engine, and then the whole body was made out of stainless steel. So the car was really heavy, and the 0 to 60 time was like 10 seconds. So it wasn't like, for the guy who did the GTO, which was, kind of not invented the American muscle car, but was a player, with the Mustang and the Corvette and all these things in that era, the American muscle car era. This was not it. So it did not drive fast, did not accelerate. It was apparently a pain in the dick to keep clean. They had issues where like the floorboards, like the paint would rub off on your shoes. So like it had a lot of, it wasn't like a good car. Okay. It wasn't practical. And it was double the price as what he said it was going to be when they started the company. But at the same time, because he was like this force of personality, he was able to drum up like a ton of interest, so much interest. And like he would drive it around, he would do these like photo shoots and talk about it. And people were like, people wanted him. People wanted him so badly that the dealers would be like, don't come and ask us if you can make a deposit for one. Okay. Like, come on, we got to get one. So then people would they would say, all right. And this is like 1981. He'd be like, all right, we'll take $5,000 cash, but we can't guarantee you. It might be years before you get your car because it took a long time to make them. Then you have to ship them over from Ireland. So it was like this craze. Okay. Then Reagan gets elected. The economy tanks. And this is like, he finally starts getting the DeLorean company to be profitable. Okay. So the British government, they did the deal because he had promised them that he would buy them out eventually. So they get their money back. And then they were also going to get a royalty on every car. And in the meantime, they create a ton of jobs in an area that had no jobs because it was effectively a war zone. So it was like this, but that was like, his plan all along was to buy the British government out of that 140 million. So he finally gets them to be profitable. They're on the right track. Reagan gets elected. The economy in the early 80s was not good. Interest rates were through the roof. And like, so when the car wasn't performing and people didn't have like the money for the luxury, unless you're like a Wall Street guy, Glenn Guglia doing junk bonds, greed is good and all that kind of stuff. The company took a hit, the sales took a hit, production took a hit. Margaret Thatcher, you know that name?
Yeah.
Okay, so Margaret Thatcher, she gets elected, and it's like a reversal from the previous administration, which I believe is the Labor Party. She comes in as more of a conservative, kind of like Reagan. It was like, we're not doing government subsidies anymore, because he went back to them. It was like, now they're losing money again. They need to keep paying people, the workers. And she comes back and they're like, well, we're not giving you any more money, so you're out. So he's like, oh, fuck. So there was kind of like peace around the factory, it was always on a razor's edge because it's like groups of people that fucking hate each other, Catholics and the Protestants in Belfast. So when they ran out of money, they had to trim everything down to like a skeletal crew. And they had people, these workers from the IRA and these other parties were pissed because they're like, hey, all these people, now we promise you kind of the world, now you're out of work. So the people that were left over, they'd be like, they would intentionally do the doors wrong. So the doors would get stuck all the time. They, like make little mistakes kind of on purpose. Then the factory was firebombed. Then you had bullet holes going through the window. So like it was a very tenuous situation. So then he gets, he gets up there and he promises, like, I will fight for DeLorean until my dying breath. And he runs around again. He's trying to raise money. And he just, like, everyone is just, hey, this is the economic realities of the time. The car's not great. He can't do it. Okay. So now he's like, he's fucking desperate. So he's like, what do I do? What do I do? How do I get this money? So he has all these shares in this company. He meets with these drug dealers. It's like the classic American 1980s story, right? Top executive needs money. What's big in the 80s? What's the recession-proof thing of the 80s? Cocaine. So he meets with these drug dealers and he does this deal with them where it's like, you give me $27 million, I will give you shares in DeLorean. And he's thinking, well, if I don't do this deal, the company goes under. Those shares are worthless anyways. So he's like, he's like, in his brain, he's like, I'll get $27 million to keep the company afloat with the agreement to do like another $100 million deal to do distribution and stuff of the drugs. And he's just like, all right, this will do it. And it's like, the shares are worthless anyways if this doesn't work. So he's like, it's money for nothing. In his brain, it's money for nothing. I get to save my company. So they like shake hands, do the deal. They're toasting champagne. In comes the FBI. Whole thing was a sting operation. So this is part of like the,
oh fuck
yeah. So this is part of like the Ronald Reagan, Nancy Reagan, where they really tightened up the war on drugs. Yeah. So that was it. He's arrested. Okay.
So hold on. Yeah. I want to pause for a second to talk about cars.com. They were also the inspiration for this episode because everyone's been talking about The Office, the best spot in the lot that we work at is sponsored by cars.com now.
Which Jake Malasek has just taken, social guy Jake. So I love Jake Malasek. If he's there next week, I say we let the air out of his tires.
We should.
He can't be employee of the month.
We should. So whoever wins the cars.com parking spot will have plenty of extra time to create an account with cars.com and track their car's value. The winning employee will get the most price parking spot at Barstool. But obviously we could all grab some very valuable insights into our car's value with cars.com and your garage feature. The Barstool employee parking garage is frustrating, but cars.com's new feature, Your Garage, is anything but. Your Garage lets you see your car's value up to 60 days in the future, so you'll know if selling today gets you a better deal than in a few weeks from now. Track your car's value so you can know exactly what to expect when you're ready to sell. Track your car's value on cars.com. Go check it out. All right, so Reagan sets him up.
No, I mean, not Reagan specifically, but his administration. So this was, it was the war on drugs. They knew he was desperate, and so they concocted this thing to get him, and it would be like a big PR win for the war on drugs. What they didn't really count on is the public was like, this war on drugs, or a good amount of the public, is bullshit, okay? And he, because he's this, charismatic, was like the ultimate sales guy, like we talked about, the Bond girls, the models, the public figure, the high place friends, all that kind of stuff. People were kind of on his side. So it goes to court, and he's on trial, in which he would have faced a very stiff jail time. He wins the case. The jury finds him innocent because they ruled that it was entrapment, that this guy was just desperate to save his company. He's not a real drug lord. It was just like he would do anything. And he even said, like, post-arrest, like, he didn't deny anything. He's like, when the British government told me, the clips I watched of him, he's so likable. I can't express that enough. Like, he's just like this. There's just something about him. There's just like this. He's like, when the British government came in and told me that they didn't want it anymore, that should have been my symbol that I shouldn't want it anymore either. But he's like, that car, that company, it had my name on it. I felt an obligation to those factory workers. I wanted to make this thing happen. If it was, he's like, but if it was some other company, I'm probably not doing that. I should have just, let it die and just accepted the failure, but he couldn't. So the trial goes on. He's freed in 1985. As soon as he's freed, his third wife, who is a model, they get a divorce, and but he goes free, and he's just never able to really get back on his feet again. So he has a heart attack later in life, but he which kind of ended because he was still trying to come up with ways to do this. And then he has this kind of massive heart attack that he survives, but he had a bad relationship with his children. He married a fourth time late in life. Like, he married in 2002, but then he died in 2005. But he died in a 1-bedroom apartment, So this guy who in the 60s and the 70s and into the 80s was on top of the world, like famous business executive, doing his own thing, brash, everyone telling him you can't start your own car company. He's like, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyways. And then he just, made the wrong chess move with DeLorean regarding like the drug deal, because his name is, even though he was freed and ruled that it was entrapment, he still did it, and his name was kind of sullied from that point on, and he just never really recovered. He kind of lived out the rest of his days kind of sad, like a kind of a sad figure. It's almost like the Goodfellas, like the rest of my days eating egg noodles and ketchup, because he never was able to like get back on top and do his own thing the way that he had dreamed. It's
crazy that no one's like licensed it out or anything. Like, is there a way, or
I don't know. I don't know. To the car?
Yeah.
I think
you would think that someone would want to make that back work. Yeah.
Yeah. With all everything from the 80s and 90s, the nostalgia is so strong.
Yeah.
It's just, I think, and you could probably find a way to do it now.
Totally.
Like make that. I mean, and the Cybertruck looks very similar to it in a lot of ways, in my opinion. You said you didn't think so, really, right?
Not really, because I think the key characteristic is a DeLorean is obviously the wing doors.
Yeah.
The Cybertruck is
still that stainless steel look.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's just so much visual. So many visually things are happening during Back to the Future, where the stainless steel is not like something that really sticks out to you.
That's the thing that gets it for me.
Really?
I don't think I've seen another car besides the Cybertruck that has that type of
steel
body look.
Yeah, I guess not. But to me, like, just knowing that the Cybertruck is like the biggest craze right now as I'm alive.
Kind of like the DeLorean one.
Yeah. I guess it's just an age thing.
Yeah.
I guess it's just an age thing.
I mean, the body is different shape. Like, that was a sports car, kind of muscle car sedan looking thing. Obviously, the Cybertruck is a big tank looking truck. But,
for sure.
The stainless steel finish definitely reminds me of
that. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's shocking, because remember how nuts people went for the Bronco when it came back?
Yeah.
It's just people love that.
Yeah.
People love nostalgia.
Yeah. I wonder. I mean, let's see if there is an update.
And also, like, you're right. It's crazy no one's made a movie on this yet. And there might be, for all we know.
There might be a movie?
Yeah, but if it's obviously not a very popular one if we don't know about it.
Well, it says that, look, it has an active website, DeLorean does, and they have like this red sports car. So maybe you can buy them? DeLorean Alpha 5. So it looks like somebody did.
Redo it?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
These cars look sweet. They don't really look anything like the DeLorean.
They don't even have the old
DMC
logo. It just says DeLorean on it. They do look nice, though. Are they electric?
This is the first time I've seen it, but it does look like you can buy the original with those weird ass doors. They call them the gull wing doors.
The classic DMC.
Yeah. I mean, they look sweet.
I guess you can. That's crazy. How
Stored
much is one
refurbished classic DeLoreans. Johnny Carson had to sell his at auction. He sold it like 1985 for like $18,000. So his ROI on his $500,000 was like $1,800 or $18,000 rather. But
so the average price on a DeLorean DMC 12 is $60K.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. That's
so I guess so the company lives on to a degree. And they look sweet, but I can't say I've ever seen one on the road.
No, I just don't think enough people know about them, right?
Well, they should send us some money for this then.
Yeah, right.
And they should probably be the ones who are leading the charge to have HBO make a miniseries. I think this would be like a great 8-part miniseries where it's like you start with a kid and he's like seeing his dad work on the line for his entire youth. Brilliant engineer. The Yankees, the Chargers, the Bond girls, the supermodels, all the drama of his like personal life, and then doing this deal. I think there's a lot. If you could do a movie about, Jordan and the Nikes, you can definitely do a miniseries about this.
1,000%.
I'm sure there's a lot of stories. And he was going to be a co-author of this book that came out in the 70s. And it was like, on a clear day, you can see General Motors was the name of the book. But then he had discrepancies with the author about what stories were going to be included. So then he bailed on the project. But that author, that book sold out like 1.6 million copies, something like that. So I wonder if you can do like a screenplay, get Aaron Sorkin on that.
Yeah, or I'd love to see Zemeckis get a crack at it. You know, I know he's like staunchly against ever Back to the Future getting rebooted. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah, like he owns like all the rights to like the future, and he's like, it will never happen as long as I'm alive.
A reboot or a number 4?
I think either. I think he's like just very.
I thought 2 was pretty good.
Everyone shits on 3 too.
That's the Old West one.
Yeah. I thought it was fine. Like, fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it was fine. Like there was nothing wrong with it.
I guess I love the idea of Biff getting like his hands on a sports almanac.
I like 2 a lot.
Yeah.
Like I borderline might like 2 more than 1, which I know is crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But I like the futuristic aspect, like you said.
You're also the guy who liked Indiana 2. Temple of Doom the best.
Yeah. I didn't like it the best, but I thought it was the second best.
You thought it was better than which one?
I thought Raiders? It was better than Raiders. Yeah.
Crazy.
I really like it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like I just think it's an awesome story. Like if he's running around Hollywood as this, he's like a not famous person. You know, like he's an auto industry guy. Yep. It's not like he's, you know, some other actor, but he is just so charismatic and a titan in that industry who is like the only guy in that industry who would like, you know, run around with that type of crew.
Yeah.
So Sammy Davis Jr., Johnny Carson, like Joe Namath, like all these guys of that era, and John DeLorean.
Mm-hmm.
And then to have his life end the way it did is just like, wow, like, I can't believe that.
That was the ending.
That played out that. And then to have like your downfall is the government, you know, like on 2 different governments. You can't do a deal with the British because Margaret Thatcher has a different, you know, philosophy on how to run government and what government subsidies should.
But like, dude, let's be honest. When he put a fucking manufacturing plant in Belfast in the middle of those times, you kind of know you're pulling it up from half court.
Well, he was like, his quote on it was like, they're the only place that would take us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
because it's like, what do you mean you're starting a car company? You know, it's like one of those things where he was threading the needle and it was working. And then the environment around him changed so drastically that he couldn't make it happen.
And that was it.
So and then he's like, well, why don't I just get cocaine money? So
I have an update here, actually. So it says new DeLorean production in 1995. Stephen Wynn, a British car mechanic from Liverpool, created a separate company based in Humble, Texas, using the DeLorean Motor Company name. Wynn acquired the trademark on the stylized DMC logo, along with the remaining parts inventory of the original DeLorean Motor Company. The company rebuilds cars, uses a combination of new old stock and reproduction parts on a made-to-order basis. Due to the passage of Low-Volume Vehicle Manufacturing Act, DMC Texas announced that it would be producing replica DeLoreans. DMC anticipates building approximately 50 vehicles per year over 6 years with an estimated retail price of $100,000.
So that's why you never see them on the road.
Yes.
50 a year. So that was like, I think the DeLoreans were making, I think it was the peak production they ever did was like 80 a day.
Really?
Yeah.
And now and even this, in December 2019, the NHTSA issued guidelines for the Low Volume Vehicle Manufacturing Act, and DMC Texas is now projecting they will begin production in 2021.
Okay.
So it's still like
super. What is that agency? What do you mean low volume? Like, who cares? What is it? We have to have high volume cars?
I have no idea.
I'm going to look into that because that sounds like too much government intervention. What do you care how many cars a company's making on their own?
No idea.
I'm talking out of hat here, or out of pocket or whatever that expression is, but that's what it sounded like when you read it.
Yeah.
What is it? It was low volume what?
After the passage of the Low Volume Vehicle Manufacturing Act, DMC Texas announced that it planned to produce replica DeLoreans. However, due to delays by the NHTSA in ratifying the act, the plan was canceled. There have been discussions about DMC Texas building an upgraded version of the original DeLorean to mark the 40th anniversary, but no details have been released.
Okay. Well, next year is what? The 40th anniversary of
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. So
maybe then. Maybe someone's gearing up to make something really cool.
I want to take back my shot at the government, because this law directs to establish a program allowing low-volume motor vehicle manufacturers to produce a limited number of vehicles annually within a regulatory system that addresses the unique safety and financial issues associated with limited production. So it's like a way it helps them, is how it reads to me. So that's good. Never mind.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, then. We could wrap this up. Man, I really hope they make this.
I hope they do too.
Yeah, show's the way to go.
Because I feel like, obviously we didn't read that book, but I feel like they're probably just scratching the surface of like the story. Like, I'm sure that he's got wild party stories. I'm sure,
totally,
like how that deal came together with the British government, all that kind of stuff. Like you could have definitely have an 8-part series on this.
Totally. All right, then. That's it, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. We got a big time draft for you on Monday that we're all excited for.
Big time.
So we'll see you then.